Rebecca sits at the far end of a long, polished table, her hands trembling as they clutch a crumpled letter. Gregory Hensley paces back and forth, his face red with rage but tinged with something else. Fear. "You've ruined us," he says. Finally, his voice low, almost a growl. He stops pacing and slams his fist on the table. The sound echoes through the empty room. Rebecca flinches but doesn't look up. "I didn't mean," she starts, her voice cracking. "Didn't mean—" "What?" Gregory snaps, cutting her off. "To call the cops? To leak fake news? To make yourself look like an idiot while millions watched?" She swallows hard, staring at the grain of the wood beneath her fingers. I thought I was protecting." "The brand." Gregory lets out a bitter laugh, short and sharp. "Protecting it. You destroyed it. Do you even realize how many lawsuits we're facing, how many people want our heads?" For a moment, neither speaks. The weight of their actions hangs heavy in the air. Outside, the distant murmur of protesters. Chanting can be heard faintly through the closed windows. "I followed your lead," Rebecca whispers, more to herself than to him. Her voice shakes, betraying the cracks forming inside her. "You told me to handle it, to fix it." Gregory freezes mid-step, his jaw tightening. He turns slowly to face her, his expression unreadable. "Don't you dare shift this onto me," he says coldly. "You made choices, bad ones." Her eyes snapped up then, meeting him for the first time. There's fire there now, born out of desperation. "And you stood by while I did it. While we both did it." He opens his mouth to respond but stops, glancing toward the door. Someone knocks softly, interrupting them. Neither moves to answer. After a beat, the knocking fades away. Rebecca leans forward, resting her elbows on the table. Her voice drops to a whisper. "What are we going to do?" Gregory exhales sharply, running a hand over his face. For the first time, he looks older, defeated. "There's nothing left to do," he mutters. "It's over." Silence settles between them again, heavier this time. Rebecca feels the truth of his words settle into her chest like a stone. She thinks about all the times she dismissed others, judged them without knowing who they were. Solomon's calm demeanor flashes in her mind, unshaken despite everything she threw at him. Finally, she stands abruptly, pushing her chair back with a screech that makes Gregory flinch. Without another word, she walks to the door, pausing only briefly before stepping out into the hallway. Behind her, Gregory sinks into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Outside, the protest chants grow louder, echoing through the building. "Tia." Monroe stares at her reflection in the mirror backstage, adjusting the collar of her blouse nervously. Cameras flash beyond the curtain, and the muffled voices of reporters fill the space around her. She takes a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "You ready?" Maya Torres asks from behind her, holding a microphone. Tia nods but doesn't turn around. "As ready as I'll ever be." Maya steps closer, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Just tell the truth. That's all anyone needs to hear." Tia closes her eyes briefly, remembering the moment she slipped Solomon that note. It feels like a lifetime ago now, though it's only been weeks. When she opens her eyes, she sees determination staring back at her in the mirror. The host introduces her, and Tia steps onto the stage, blinking against the bright lights. Applause greets her, louder than she expected. She grips the microphone, tightly grounding herself. "Thank you," she begins, her voice soft but steady. "A lot has happened since that day at Velvet and Gold. People keep asking me why I risked my job to help Solomon Gray. And honestly," she pauses, searching for the right words, "I didn't think I had a choice." Someone in the audience shifts uncomfortably. Tia notices but keeps going. "I've worked in luxury retail for years, and let me tell you, it's not just one bad manager or one rude comment. It's systemic. It's built into the walls of places like that store. Every day, I see people treated differently because of how they look, how they dress, where they come from. And after a while, you start to believe it too. You start thinking maybe you don't belong either." Her voice wavers slightly, but she presses on. But then Solomon walked in, and instead of shrinking under their judgment, he stood taller. He showed me, and everyone watching, That dignity isn't something you earn. It's something you carry with you no matter what anyone says. The crowd is silent now, hanging on every word. Tia feels tears prickling at the corners of her eyes but blinks them away. So when I warned him, it wasn't just about helping him. It was about saying no to the system, to the silence, to letting fear control me anymore. Applause erupts, but Tia barely hears it. She lowers the microphone, exhaling deeply. As she steps off stage, Maya meets her halfway, pulling her into a tight hug. "You were incredible," Maya murmurs. Tia manages a small smile. "I hope it helps." "It will," Maya assures her. As they walk away together, Tia feels lighter somehow, as if shedding years of quiet resentment has given her room to breathe again. Rebecca steps closer to Solomon, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. The sound feels deliberate, designed to unsettle him. She tilts her head slightly, a smirk playing at the corner of her mouth. "So," she begins, her tone light but laced with venom, "where does someone like you get this kind of money?" Solomon doesn't move. His hands rest calmly on the edge of the counter, fingers brushing lightly over the stack of cash he's just placed there. He looks up slowly, meeting her gaze with an intensity that makes her pause for half a second, just long enough for the room to notice. "Does it matter?" he replies evenly. His voice is quiet, almost gentle, but it carries weight. Around them, customers glance nervously between Rebecca and Solomon. Some laugh awkwardly, others shift uncomfortably, pretending not to listen. Tia Monroe stands frozen near a display case, her fists clenched so tightly her nails dig into her palms. She watches as Rebecca leans in closer, invading Solomon's space. "You have to understand," Rebecca continues, lowering her voice but ensuring everyone can still hear. "People are curious. We don't see, well, your kind here very often." Tia closes her eyes briefly, swallowing hard. She knows exactly what Rebecca is doing, planting seeds of doubt, making sure everyone sees Solomon as an outsider. But what hurts most is how easily the other staff members let it happen. No one says a word. Solomon exhales softly, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the only sound is the faint hum of the air conditioning. Then, without missing a beat, he smiles, a small knowing smile that seems to say more than any retort could. "No," he says finally, his voice steady. "I suppose you wouldn't." Rebecca blinks, caught off guard by his composure. She opens her mouth to respond, but stops when she notices Tia staring directly at her. There's something in Tia's eyes, anger, maybe even pity, that makes Rebecca take a step back. For the first time, the balance shifts. Tia waits until the crowd thins before approaching Solomon. Her heart pounds as she glances around the store, checking for cameras or prying eyes. When she's certain no one is watching, she slips a folded piece of paper into his hand. "They're recording you," she whispers, her voice barely audible. "Be careful." Solomon looks down at the note, then up at Tia. Their eyes meet briefly, and in that moment, an unspoken understanding passes between them. Gratitude flickers across Solomon's face, though he quickly masks it with his usual calm demeanor. "Thank you," he murmurs, tucking the note into his pocket. Tia nods once, then steps away before anyone can notice their exchange. As she moves back toward her station, she feels a surge of adrenaline mixed with fear. She knows what she's done. It's rebellion, plain and simple. In a place like Velvet and Gold, where silence is expected and compliance demanded, speaking out even in whispers feels dangerous, but it also feels right. She catches sight of a security camera pointed directly at her and forces herself to look away, focusing instead on straightening a nearby display. Her hands shake slightly as she adjusts a scarf draped over a mannequin. Behind her, Solomon watches silently, his mind racing. He hadn't anticipated allies here, not today, not in this world. Yet Tia's warning changes everything. It reminds him why he came here in the first place, to expose the cracks beneath the polished surface. As Tia walks away, Solomon allows himself a rare moment of vulnerability. He exhales deeply, feeling both the weight of her courage and the risk she's taken on his behalf. Solomon sits on the edge of his bed staring at the eviction notice taped crookedly to his door. The room is dimly lit, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across cracked walls. His phone buzzes incessantly on the nightstand, each notification a fresh wound. Hate messages flood in, accusations, insults, threats. Friends who once called him inspirational now ghost him completely. He picks up the phone, scrolling through unread texts and missed calls. One message stands out. "You brought this on yourself." It's from someone he trusted. He sets the phone down gently, as if it might shatter in his hands. For the first time, cracks begin to show in his carefully maintained composure. His shoulders slump and his breath comes heavier. He thinks back to Tia's warning. "They're recording you. Be careful." Was she right? Did he underestimate them? A memory surfaces unbidden. His father telling him as a boy, "Son, they'll never see you as equal. Don't let that break you." Solomon feels the weight of those words pressing down on him now, decades later. But then, just as quickly, anger flickers inside him. Not rage, but resolve. This isn't over. If anything, it's only the beginning. The studio lights are blinding, hot against Solomon's skin. He adjusts his tie slightly, leaning forward in his chair as the anchor fixes him with a skeptical stare. "Mr. Gray," the anchor begins, her tone clipped, "there are allegations circulating online that your wealth may not be legitimate. What do you have to say about these claims?" Solomon doesn't hesitate. He reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a small device, clicking a button. The screen behind him flickers to life, playing audio recordings provided by Tia. Rebecca's voice cuts through the air, sharp and cruel. "He doesn't belong here." Then Gregory's panicked orders. "Fix this mess or you're done." Finally, laughter from employees echoing like ghosts. Gasps ripple through the live audience. Cameras zoom in on Solomon's face, calm and resolute. "This isn't about me," he says, his voice steady but filled with quiet fury. "It's about how easily people like me are dismissed, ridiculed, and erased. I walked into that store knowing exactly what would happen because it happens every day, to millions of us." The anchor fumbles for words, visibly shaken. Solomon leans back slightly, letting the truth hang heavy in the air. As the nation watches, Solomon takes a deep breath, his expression softening ever so slightly. "I am Solomon Gray," he begins, "a retired billionaire philanthropist. For decades, I've worked quietly to fund civil rights initiatives around the world. I could have stayed invisible, safe behind my wealth. But silence protects no one." His voice grows stronger, more impassioned. "What happened at Velvet and Gold wasn't random, it was deliberate. I wanted to expose the systemic racism that thrives in places like that store, places where privilege reigns supreme, and humanity takes a back seat." Tears well up in viewers' eyes as they realize the depth of his sacrifice. Meanwhile, Rebecca and Gregory watch from separate screens, their faces pale with horror. Gregory grips the edge of his desk, muttering under his breath, "This can't be real." Rebecca buries her face in her hands, trembling. They both know the game is up. Their reputations and their empire are crumbling before their eyes. In a dramatic twist, Solomon announces his final move. Every item purchased from Velvet and Gold will be donated to underprivileged communities nationwide. Cameras capture the moment trucks pull away from warehouses, loaded with luxury goods destined for charity events. Social media explodes again, but this time hashtags like #Justice for Gray trend globally, sparking conversations about privilege, wealth redistribution, and accountability. Rebecca stares blankly at her computer screen as news articles pour in, each one condemning her actions. Gregory paces frantically in his office, issuing hollow promises of reform to anyone who will listen. Outside, protesters gather outside Velvet and Gold, holding signs that read, "Luxury shouldn't discriminate." Employees whisper apologies to Tia, who simply smirks knowingly. For Rebecca and Gregory, there's nothing left to salvage. Their empire crumbles beneath the weight of their own prejudice. Days later, Solomon walks through an empty park, unnoticed. By passers-by. There's no fanfare, no celebration, just quiet satisfaction. He reflects on everything he's lost, friendships, privacy, dignity. Yet he also sees hope, a shift in public consciousness, institutions forced to reckon with their biases. As he sits on a bench, a child runs past wearing a watch from his donation drive. Solomon smiles faintly, watching the boy laugh and chase. After a ball, this wasn't about revenge, he reminds himself. It was about justice, and justice sometimes looks like change. Inside Velvet and Gold, staff members exchange uneasy glances. Some quit outright, unwilling to work for a tainted brand. Others whisper apologies to Tia, who remains silent but smirks, knowingly. Rebecca locks herself in her office, drowning in regret. She replays Solomon's interview over and over, unable to shake the image of her own cruelty laid bare for the world to see. Gregory scrambles to salvage what's left, issuing hollow promises of reform. But even he knows it's too late. Outside, protesters gather, holding signs that read, "Luxury shouldn't discriminate." The system is shaken, not destroyed, but it's a start. Rebecca sits alone in her apartment, staring at her reflection in a cracked mirror. The headlines flash across her TV screen. Former manager fired amid racism scandal. Her hands tremble as she clutches a mug of cold coffee, the weight of her actions pressing down on her chest. She replays moments from that day, the sneers, the whispers, the way she dismissed Solomon without a second thought. Gregory Hensley isn't faring any better. In his penthouse office, he paces frantically, dodging calls from lawyers and reporters alike. Class action lawsuits pile up on his desk, each one alleging years of discriminatory practices at Velvet and Gold. Employees who once followed their lead now distance themselves, whispering apologies to anyone who will listen. They're cowards. Gregory mutters under his breath, slamming a folder shut. But even as he says it, he knows the truth. They're survivors. Meanwhile, protesters gather outside the store, holding signs that read, "Luxury shouldn't discriminate." Inside, staff members exchange uneasy glances, avoiding eye contact. The empire they built crumbles under the weight of its own hypocrisy, leaving behind a hollow shell of privilege no one wants to defend. Tia Monroe stands nervously backstage before her first live interview. Cameras flash beyond the curtain, and the distant hum of reporters fills the air. She adjusts her collar, trying to steady her breathing. "You've got this," Maya Torres reassures her, placing a hand on her shoulder. When Tia steps onto the stage, applause greets her, louder than she expected. She grips the microphone tightly, grounding herself. "I didn't think I'd ever speak out," she begins, her voice soft but steady. But staying silent felt worse. Worse for me, worse for my community, worse for anyone who's ever walked into a place like Velvet and Gold and been made to feel small. Her words resonate deeply with the audience. She talks about systemic racism, about the courage it takes to stand up against injustice. "I was scared," she admits, but fear doesn't excuse complicity. As she speaks, viewers at home nod along, inspired by her bravery. For Tia, this isn't just recognition. It's validation that her voice matters. Backstage, Maya smiles proudly, knowing their fight has only just begun. Maya Torres sits at her laptop, typing furiously as the final draft of her exposé comes together. When she hits publish, the article spreads like wildfire, earning accolades and catapulting her career to new heights. Days later, an envelope arrives at her doorstep. Inside is a handwritten note from Solomon. "You saw the truth when others looked away. Thank you." Maya reads the words over and over, feeling a swell of gratitude. Their partnership wasn't just strategic, it was transformative. Together, they exposed a system designed to protect the privileged while erasing the marginalized. As she reflects on everything that's happened, Maya realizes something profound. Justice isn't achieved alone. It's a collective effort, fueled by courage, strategy, and solidarity. Solomon packs quietly, folding clothes into a worn suitcase. There's no ceremony, no farewell party, just the soft rustle of fabric and the occasional creak of floorboards beneath his feet. Before he leaves, He writes 2 notes, one for Tia, one for Maya. Justice doesn't always look like revenge. Sometimes it looks like change. He places the notes on the kitchen counter and walks out the door, disappearing into the early morning mist. No one notices him go. For those who know him, his departure feels bittersweet. Though he vanishes from public view, his legacy lives on in the movements he sparked and the lives he touched. Social media buzzes with hashtags like "Be Like Solomon" and "Luxury for All," igniting conversations about inclusivity and equity in elite spaces. Corporations scramble to implement diversity training programs, though many remain performative. Still, seeds of real change take root. Underprivileged communities benefit from Solomon's donations, and young activists draw inspiration from his story. Public opinion shifts slowly but surely, forcing institutions to confront their biases or risk irrelevance. It's not a perfect victory, but it's progress, a reminder that change often starts with a single act of defiance. In private moments, those who witnessed Solomon's journey reflect on what they've learned. Rebecca sits alone in her apartment, replaying her mistakes in her mind, wondering if she'll ever rebuild her life. Gregory avoids mirrors, unable to face the man he's become. Meanwhile, Tia and Maya exchange messages late at night, discussing how far they've come and how much further they have to go. For all of us, Tia types, Solomon's actions serve as a mirror. They force hard truths into the light. Maya nods, reading the message silently. As the story fades from headlines, its impact lingers. Viewers are left pondering the themes of privilege, systemic racism, and resistance. Solomon's methodical approach proves that dismantling oppressive systems requires patience, strategy, and sacrifice. His quiet departure underscores a powerful message. Justice isn't loud or flashy, it's steady and deliberate. The audience walks away inspired, carrying the torch Solomon lit, ready to challenge injustice wherever they find it. This story reminds us that justice often begins with a single act of courage, and it's up to all of us to carry the torch. If Solomon's journey moved you, imagine the impact we can create together by sharing this message with others. Your voice matters, whether it's through a like, a share, or joining our community of changemakers by subscribing. Let's keep these conversations alive and turn awareness into action. Together, we can challenge injustice wherever it hides. Will you help spread the word today?